Bernie's back. Everybody, if we could have take our seats. Wow, the volume's up today.
It's good, we can hear you. It's good.
Yes. So bring the meeting to order. Okay, I thought we had lost somebody. There. Okay, no, that's fine. Mr. Harris, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Troy.
Here.
Ms. Bird.
Here.
Mr. Dash.
Here.
Ms. Lance.
Here.
Mr. Phil.
Here.
Mr. Grant.
Here.
Mr. Rubenfeld. Chairman Adams.
Here. Do we have a quorum?
We do.
We have a quorum, so therefore we are in session. The Home Rule Study Commission. First order of business is approval of the minutes from the 2nd of May last week. Everybody received a copy of these. Are there any corrections or additions to be made to them? Hearing none, is there a motion to accept the minutes?
Motion to accept.
Is there a motion? Second?
Second.
There is a second from Commissioner Dastra. Any objection? Hearing none, the minutes are approved as written. Next order of business is a report from the chair. I have just one item to mention, and I'm glad she's able to get here, Commissioner Rufo. I was able to attend the Mayor's Block Party for the table last night, and I want to say I was very impressed. Thank you for all the work you've put into this, and for everybody else. Mr. Dastra also was there last night. As we go forward, listening to the questions from the public is eye-opening. They run the range of people have absolutely no idea. They didn't know that we exist. They have detailed questions about specifics, and everything in between. So I think it's a wonderful thing the Public Engagement Committee is doing, and especially thank you, Commissioner Rufo, for arranging all this. Very successful night, and I will see who's ever is joining me at the table next Wednesday. I have no other items. Public comments, if there are any public comments, please come to the lectern, provide your name and the street in which you live, limit your comments to 3 minutes, and recognize this is, all the meetings are live streamed and recorded, and this is your consent to being recorded. Are there any comments? Great. Hearing none. Moving on, deliberations on the form of government. At this point, I move that we, without objection, we go to a committee of the whole. Hearing none. We will turn the deliberations over to the consultants from PEL.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. The last meeting, we left off talking about the office of the mayor. We left off with the resign to run, and there was not a consensus reached relative to that. And I would like to preface, we'd like to allow approximately 45 minutes at the end of our discussion here on the various offices to spend some time going over the draft language, charter draft language for council. So if we can allow about 45 minutes for that, or about 7:45, let's say we'll stop wherever we are with the officials and move into that. Going back to resign to run, as I said at the last meeting last week, there was no consensus, and we agreed to revisit that issue. So I would raise that issue for further discussion at this point. Again, the question is, must the mayor resign from their office to run for another office? And if so, at what level? Federal, state, county, local, or any combination thereof?
I'll simply say what I said at the last meeting, which is that I think a resign to run rule would be unwise for healthy competition in democratic elections, small d democracy.
And I'll say kind of what I was saying last time, that I think resign to run is wise. I've actually come around on council members that I don't particularly care as much that council members resign to run, but the mayor is the executive of the city, and despite being the central hub of a particular party right now, essentially, I think the executive of the city should be focused on the city.
I'm going to concur with Mr. Feldman, and that I just oppose the concept of forcing somebody to quit their job in order to pursue another job. It's not, whether it's the mayor, whether it's somebody who's working in a factory, whether they're working, in an office. I just oppose the idea of forcing someone to resign to pursue an improvement or a level up. So I oppose resign to run.
Yeah, I also don't support resign to run. I think we have somebody who's been successful enough in the office that we've elected them and potentially reelected them, and they're I think they should be able to continue to serve.
I would agree.
Any other comments?
I'm not really going to comment because there's only 8 commissioners here, so it could come out to a tie where a decision would be made. I think we had a lot of discussion about this at our last meeting, and we couldn't come to a consensus. So to do it now when we couldn't get an even consensus, I just think it should be held off till everybody's here to discuss it.
Anyone else? Liz?
I just, I think that for a federal, I think I said this the last time, for a federal position, I think that the mayor should resign. But other than that, I don't think they should be forced to resign.
I don't think they should be forced to resign. I think, we haven't had that, the city currently doesn't have that. Nothing seems to have, if it's not broken, don't fix it kind of thing. I could go along with what Liz suggested if there was, if that was something that folks needed to do to get on board, but I'm also happy with not having making the mayor resign to run.
Okay, very good. At this point, I'm showing 5 individuals not requiring a resign to run, and a couple individuals actually, 2 saying yes, there should be a resign to run provision. But Ms. Bird has indicated, we'd like to revisit that issue. At this point, I think what we will do is draft language that addresses the majority at this point, and then when you see the draft language, it can be discussed again. Okay, moving to the next question, ability to run for separate offices at the same election. Should the mayor run for 2 offices at the same time? As an example, the mayor running for the office of mayor and also the office of council member, so that if they win or lose, they have an elective office.
How did we resolve this for the council? I think I know what it is, but I would like to know. I wanted to know what we decided on the council side.
I have to go back. Let's see.
I think I know what it is, but I want to.
Give the draft. Tell her draft. It should be in the draft.
Oh, that's a great point. We're all sitting here.
Well, actually, I was just looking for it,
Yeah, I'm not sure,
It's in the
and
If it's not in the draft, that means it's not a restriction, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, it's not, there is no restriction on the council.
Yeah, there is no
So everybody-
restriction.
There's no requirement.
Correct.
There's no restriction for that.
If there's no restriction there, I mean, that's kind of de facto saying they could run for council and mayor, right?
Just means there's no restriction.
Right, so then this would be the same dynamic.
If for council you decided it's okay to run for two separate offices, the mayor's a separate elected position, so you could have different restrictions or the same. Whatever you think is appropriate. It's a different type of office.
I don't think it should be different.
yeah, I agree again with Mr. Feldman. I would say that if we're not requiring a person to resign the run, what we would effectively be doing by default is requiring them to resign to run if it happens that a council person, his term is running coincident with the mayor. So that would put them at an unfair advantage from those serving in the other class. So if you had goals to be the mayor, you would have to make sure that you were elected in the year in which the mayor was not, so that you would not have to resign, give up your council seat. And I feel that's a contradiction. So I do not have a problem with running for two seats at the same time.
if they win both,
They have to resign
Have to resign one.
because
And could we- and I guess I'm just thinking would we assume that they would, I think we would tend to assume that they would resign council.
But they would
Which-
have
which-
the
which-
option.
But they could,
They could resign mayor.
Correct.
or whatever else they run for county controller.
Oh, right, yeah, right, yeah, right, okay.
You know?
I guess, yeah, right, it's
Yeah,
not
we
just,
use the example.
we just use that as an example, but that's not,
It's any office.
it's any office.
It's any
Yep,
office.
yeah, fine.
And
Yeah,
in
I
that
guess.
case, the qualification, you can't have two elected positions at once. You'd have to pick.
And then the procedure for filling a vacancy kicks in and so on and so forth.
does.
Yep, yep, fine.
I mean, as a voter, I think that's kind of foolish of somebody to do that, but I'm not sure it needs to be in the charter.
I don't think it makes sense to me that you're running for two different offices. Like, as a voter, I would agree with that. I
Yeah.
just think it sounds unfocused and disorganized, but I mean, that's all I would say. I mean, I could go either way on that, but I don't think it makes logical sense to me.
Just hedging their bets. If they're running for council and they have a really competitive mayoral race, I actually think it's good for our community that if they're not going to be elected mayor, they at least have the opportunity to be on council then.
I agree with Peter.
I just adding to Ms. Elias's comment, while I don't think we should put it into the charter, I just sort of concur that I can see voters would be quite turned off by this. So let's leave, as we have been prone to say for the last month or two, let's leave it to the voters. If the voters don't like this person running for two offices, they cannot vote for them for both of them. That's their decision.
If a voter asks them when they're running, which office you're going to resign, that's sort of the answer right there. So it's up to the voters to call this thing, not.
Right. And, yeah, most likely their campaign would make that clear, which one they were, yeah.
Which one they
Interesting.
really coveted. Or which one they felt really secure in.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Any other comments?
That's what really.
That would be very interesting.
Okay, we will move forward. Answers are no for that. Next question, prohibitions and ability to serve. Forfeiture of office. The mayor will be required to forfeit their office if they move from the municipality or no longer meet any of the other qualifications prescribed by applicable law or the charter. No longer a registered voter, they don't take the oath of office. Should we maintain or change that language in terms of forfeiture?
I would maintain that language.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay.
Agree.
Yeah, agreed.
Yes, agreed.
Should the mayor be allowed to hold any other elected or appointed office? And if so, what limitations, if any, should be placed?
So are there, like, serving on, things like the electoral boards and,
Like a judge of elections?
yeah, and like the precinct captains, things like that. Is that included in that?
That could be excluded. That could be excluded.
And what's,
Election
do
offices.
we have those kind of exclusions now, or, and what's, and I don't know what common practice might
It
be.
is in the third-class code, there's the exclusion on,
Election, I think, offices, election.
I was gonna say, the third class city code is elected offices. When they talk about appointed, my interpretation of that, it's a government-appointed office. The issue that you're raising is you're appointed by, if you're appointed by a political party, now versus elected by a political party, there's a difference, but,
there's exceptions too, isn't it? The just,
I think we had this question with council,
Yeah.
You
like,
did.
for example,
Yeah.
could a mayor or city council person be a delegate of their party
Right.
for the,
Yeah.
whatever that is,
that's
the
not an
electoral
election office,
college?
that's, that's a party office. It's
Okay.
not a governmental office.
that's what I was trying to clarify. What I'm
Yeah.
talking about is
Right.
not the party appointments or party elections, but governmental offices and governmental elections.
Like if the governor appointed a mayor to X commission or board, is that something we're saying this would,
That would be okay, that would be an
Yeah.
appointed from another that wouldn't be elected. So we're saying the elected position.
Well, you have in your question.
Or,
So that's why the
I
question.
apologize.
Right.
I was thinking more formal appointed, yeah, like a judge or.
I don't think the mayor should be allowed to hold another elected an elected
Office.
office,
Right.
yeah, with the exception of the delegate.
Is there an example of this that we might not be thinking of where we would want them to be able to do that?
That's up here. The mayor of Chester was also, I believe, the state representative for that district that encompassed
Oh,
Chester.
Yeah.
yeah.
Kirkland. Kirkland.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's the truth.
Yeah,
I think that's interesting because it's almost like you are the mayor of the city and then you represent your citizens at the state level. I don't know how I feel about that.
Full-time legislature, they say.
yeah, right.
I mean, I get, and maybe this conversation
Into
kind of goes
salaries.
into with whether, if someone does run for mayor and city council at the same time, like, do we want to make sure we exclude them from one?
What is it currently?
There is,
No exclusions?
I think there is exclusion under the third class.
Election office,
Yeah.
you said they couldn't be, hold an election office position.
Is that your third?
Yeah.
I don't really have strong feelings about this.
I mean, I don't feel that the mayor should hold another elected or appointed office. I just think that, if I'm understanding, I mean, I think I understand what you're saying, like if the appointment, if it's something that they're appointed to, that doesn't count? I was a little confused on that.
There's no limitation.
I think the issue is, what are they, when I was talking about the difference between appointed by a party versus appointed by the government. So for example, the language that's typically used here is relating to serving offices of public service, multiple offices at the same time, right? So, serving in your political party is not the same thing as serving an office of the entire community. And so that when the language that exists in some of the municipal codes and in the charters, which is not often well drafted or of which there may not be a lot of case law to interpret, the general interpretation that attorneys give it is when you're talking about an appointed office, it's not appointed to a committee, it's appointed to a similar, position that would
Of some authority.
some authority. So
Right.
like, if I'm appointed to the governor's commission, the mayor's appointed to a committee the governor establishes to study the effects of carbon emissions. And it's, they meet once a month. That's not a conflict with the charter provision. The better example of a conflict would be the governor says, I'm going to appoint you to serve as my first assistant deputy. Okay, well, now I'm appointed to
The governor's regional representative.
right,
Right.
which is essentially a similar full-time job, and now I can't, can I really devote?
But you'd allow the opiate commission, the mayor would be able to serve on that. So Amy, I think, when you said the governor appoints you to a commission?
Yeah, I understand
Yeah, right.
what Barry just explained. That makes sense to me.
Currently, there are no provisions addressing this in either the third-class city code or the optional Plan A.
Interesting.
If we take this up a couple of levels, is there a prohibition from somebody serving in both the House and the Senate, for example? If I could potentially the President of the United States also be a member of the House of Representatives? I would think that's crazy, but I'm just wondering do they talk about this at higher levels?
I'm more interested, are there other third-class cities? What do they, what's,
Yeah,
what
how
do
do they
other
manage
third-class
that?
cities
Yeah.
do? That have gone to charter, sorry.
Okay.
I think the rep mayor thing is actually it's not that common, but it's not totally infrequent.
Yeah,
I think that does actually happen more than you might think. I'm not sure if it's good or not. I'm just saying.
yeah, I mean, considering we have a full-time legislature and the mayor's also getting paid, that to me seems like a little bit of taking advantage of your public office.
Yeah.
I just see serving in two positions, whether they're elected or appointed, as a conflict of interest. You can only serve one master, sort of thing. And are you the mayor first and the Secretary of Commerce for the governor second, or the other way around? And so I say no. You should not be in two positions.
I think you're all making the case.
I think there is.
The stipulation
Council
about being full-time,
Yeah.
can serve no other full-time appointed position.
I think there is a difference going along with what Patty said in terms of the appointed office. An appointed full-time position is one thing. An appointment to an advisory board, if you will, of some sort is another, where the expertise of the mayor is an important element on maybe a statewide advisory board of some sort.
Maybe
But it's not a full-time appointed position.
Could those two questions be handled separately then? Because it is confusing the way that it's worded.
It could provide some clarity to that,
Yeah,
yes.
Yes.
I think it actually makes sense for you to consider each of these as separate questions. The way you're discussing it, and trying to help your conversation. I think it makes sense for you to take first, should they be able to hold another elected position first, and then address the appointment.
because am I reading it correct? So this is section 209 of the draft, right? And
No,
in the-
that
of the-
draft
Where's the
is
mayor
city
now?
council.
I know, but
Oh,
in council,
It's in there, yeah.
In council.
we say no council member shall hold an elected office in the United States or the Commonwealth, or school district, or serve as an officer or employee of the city. So,
Right.
I mean, that's the same question, right?
Okay,
And
yes,
I,
it is.
yeah, and I support prohibiting them from serving another elected office. Similar language to that.
Right.
Okay.
I'm good.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, there's agreement on elected office then,
That's the council prohibition,
right.
same as the
We'll
council
use-
prohibition.
Same as
Yeah.
council.
You're okay with that then, right?
And with the appointed office, if we clarify that to address a full-time appointed position that is compensated versus a part-time position that may be advisory in nature, if you will.
Yeah.
Clarification would be
Yeah.
good, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that takes us to the powers of the mayor. Should the powers and duties of the mayor be those that are permitted to any mayor of a city operating under a charter of the optional Plan A? And what you see elicited there are the current provisions under the optional Plan A in terms of the responsibility there. The mayor basically serves as the chief executive officer of the city. They enforce the charter and ordinances of the city and all general laws. They annually provide to council and the public a report on the work of the previous year. They make recommendations to council from time to time for action by council. They appoint department heads and supervise all departments of the city. They do have veto power over ordinances, including the budget ordinance. There is a provision that should they veto it, council can override the veto by a vote of 2/3 of council. The mayor also can attend meetings of council and take part in discussions of council, though has no vote, with the exception of a council tie on filling a vacancy.
So I read this and I thought that it just reflects what the optional charter plan A says.
That is correct.
That's
I
the
just
current,
wanna-
That
that's
is
the
what
current
that
optional
is.
plan.
Do you want to maintain, the question is, do you want to maintain that language? Do you want to alter that language to add to, subtract from, change in any manner?
It felt appropriate to me as it is.
I actually want to take something that Darlene had mentioned earlier. I'd be interested in changing the word annually to like quarterly, maybe.
Yeah, I like that idea.
What, change what?
So what, they report quarterly to the council and the public works on the work of the previous quarter?
I mean, she's doing that at every meeting now, so why not?
And I think we put that language in the budget.
Yeah, I mean, the budget subcommittee is developing
Language to that.
language around a quarterly budget review.
This is more a state of the city type
Yeah.
of report that is done annually.
Right.
That's not happening currently,
There's an
Quarterly.
annual state of the
There's an
city.
annual state of the
yes, there
city.
is an annual state of the
Right.
city, right, but
Yeah.
you're not suggesting that happen quarterly, are you?
Well, I think it's gonna happen in the budget process if,
It
What
is.
we've been
it's in
discussing.
the- Yes, it's in the budget process to have a quarterly report to council on the quarter's performance and the year-to-date.
Of the budget.
Of the budget.
Budget.
Of the budget. This is on, goals, accomplishments.
So why don't we
shortfalls.
change that to whatever it's called, the state of the,
City.
state of the city?
Sure.
That seems different than what you're suggesting,
Okay.
right? With the quarterly budget reports, which would then be addressed in the finance section
Yeah.
when we get to
I
it.
think we're
Fine with me.
working on it.
Yeah.
So Tony, does that address your concerns? That it's just keep this, the annual report is the state of the city? the budget report would happen on a quarterly basis? Is that,
Yeah, I, however you guys feel, I wasn't necessarily thinking about having like 4 state of the cities, just like,
Right.
you know,
right, I think that's what we, yeah.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure that it's,
yeah, I'm comfortable.
okay.
And I would just say for the veto language, even though that's gonna be different in the finance report, these will match up, because it says she has the right to veto the budget, and we're talking about that language. I think we're gonna bring it
Yeah,
back to the committee.
I think the way we were,
It's gonna come to the
we
committee.
talked about veto and overriding veto in Budget and Finance Subcommittee, and I think we were coming around to not 2/3, but majority plus one.
Right.
That is
Which-
that's correct.
Because I don't know I think we thought that the math on 2/3 might not be reliable.
Yeah, and that language is written for varying sizes of
Right.
counties.
So I think, if we're going to say majority plus one to override a budget veto, that, implementing that here
Right.
would be.
Yeah, that would be a change from the current.
Yep.
Should there be something, and this is just throwing this out there, that they should make themselves available to city council at the request of council. So if council wants them, this says the mayor may attend meetings. Doesn't say the mayor will be at every meeting. And if council wants the mayor there for a specific reason, would that be a reasonable, would avail themselves to council at their invitation or something to that effect?
I like where you're headed with that, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically giving council, the ability to
Would that be in this?
to require the mayor's attendance at an upcoming meeting.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, the council could request the mayor be there. I'm seeing the case of, a majority on council of one party, mayor of another party, and the two are saying, we want to know what you're doing. One is keeping the mayor said, well, I'm just not going to listen to them.
Yes.
and
I would be on board with that.
Is that should that be written into the powers of council as opposed, and an obligation of the mayor?
Well, I would put it at this point and say it would be an obligation of the mayor,
Yeah, but I
but
think,
I know what you're saying. I don't,
Just trying to
Yeah.
summarize, what I think the language you're asking for is so that it can be maybe clarified is, you would put in this section something along the lines of, the mayor shall attend council meetings at the request of city council.
Right.
So here, they may attend, but if council requests, they shall attend. That's really what you're asking, I believe.
Mhm.
yeah, pretty much, yes.
but I guess my question still goes back to the powers of council. Can the council compel the mayor?
Yeah,
But-
that's what
To be
it's
there.
saying.
But we just,
Well, I know.
yeah, I know what
but-
you're saying.
But it feels like council
should be
should, that should be like articulated in the
Yes.
powers of council as
So
well.
they know they
I
have
agree
that
with Peter
power.
on that.
I mean, it might be redundant, but I think that.
Yeah, we can add that.
Council can require.
Yeah.
It'll be in the council's powers.
Okay.
The mayor and council.
I don't really want to get into a deep discussion because the finance committee has not actually presented anything to us
And
yet.
we
But
should.
could somebody explain the difference between 2/3 and majority?
so what's the math? I mean,
I get a little worried when you said that the math doesn't, I mean, if you lose faith in math, and lose faith in God.
So 2/3 of 7 is 4.7.
So it's 5.
So
But It
5.
would have to be 5.
But say there was,
But isn't it?
if there was, say we had a vacancy and there was 6, I think that's the example that we came around to.
Okay.
And I think that we thought that it would always come to the same outcome, but it just eliminated the possibility of the need for a discussion over whether 4 or 5 or,
Okay, all right, thank you.
And the language here is generic in terms of the
Right.
code. There can be different numbers of council members, 5,
I think, right.
7, 9 council members.
I do believe those charters.
right.
Yeah,
So,
most charters have.
I was just asking if their
Yeah.
experience, most charters use
Most.
2/3 or use majority plus one, and what they were confirming for me is that
When
most
those people-
charters actually use majority plus one.
Right, because the majority of 6 is 4. Or 2/3 majority of 6.
Yeah, I mean,
It's
you don't
four.
have to, that's, I don't need
And
any
a
more
majority of 6 is
information.
4.
I don't need any more information, thank you.
Got it.
Yeah, that's right. You did have your disclaimer, that's right.
Usually when someone says super majority, it's majority plus one.
Yeah.
It's, yeah.
Isn't
Thank
that your
you.
subject, Brian?
The 2/3 is kind of odd.
Oh, yeah, I'm staying out of this one.
Any other comments on the office of the mayor?
I would just
Before
say
we move
about,
on.
department heads, that she appoints all department heads. When we start talking about there are a lot of charters where the mayor does not appoint the department head. So there's examples of that in the other charters that you gave us. So I
You're
don't know
not-
when that comes around. I don't know, depends on how we talk about these department heads. And
Okay. So you're uncomfortable by saying today,
right,
the mayor
because
should
we're
appoint
gonna
all
talk
department-
about department heads
Got it.
and, you know, I mean, I guess we're gonna talk about it. I've seen it in other charters.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that's gonna be some discussion.
Council still approves the appointment.
They still approve
The
it,
power
but,
of the mayor is to,
but some of the charters say that council appoints. So, you know, I mean, that would be up for discussion. And all of the charters don't say the mayor appoints the department heads. We have charters that you gave us that say the council appoints that person. And it's for different departments, so that's why I said, I don't know, when we get around to that, we talk about that.
I suspect there are some department heads you think the mayor should appoint regardless of what they are. There is at least one. I don't know what it is. And I guess
Yeah, probably
it makes
most
me
of them.
think,
Mayor,
maybe we could just
Probably
write
most of
this
them.
to say.
I mean, just saying, I know like, we're gonna talk about the solicitor. A lot of the charters,
Yeah.
city council appoints a solicitor or the law firm that's gonna do that, not by mayor, but by council. So,
To resolve this, maybe we could just say the mayor shall appoint department heads instead of using the word all, and then it
Right.
doesn't preclude the possibility
Yes,
that at some
I'd be
future
good with
point in
that.
time, something in our
Mhm.
deliberations could be different, but we can acknowledge that
right,
the mayor does have the power to appoint
department.
some
heads.
department heads at
Yes, and
least.
I agree, probably most of them.
I mean, that's, I'm not sure how I feel about that one because I think it would be good to know who is she assigning? I think we would need to know that. I think for her job, he or she would need to know that. Like,
Well, what we're saying, we'll get to it when we discuss those roles,
okay.
but it won't, so we don't have to change this language.
Yeah.
So,
So like maybe
Yeah.
highlight the bold italic,
Oh,
highlight
sure.
this
just
one.
highlight all for
Okay,
now.
that's fine.
Is that
That's
work?
I mean, I'm with Liz on this. I think the mayor, whomever they are, should be, so if they're the chief executive of the city, they should be able to appoint appoint their department heads at the approval of council. There's some check and balance there because council could say, yeah, no, we don't like this suggestion you're making, go make another one, right? So I feel like there's some check and balance there.
Yeah.
I personally agree with that wholeheartedly and cannot imagine a circumstance in which I would say the mayor shouldn't get to appoint a department head. I just thought maybe there's a way to make this language work so we could all.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
I agree with that. You
Yeah.
can change that.
Part of the other charters too might be who is actually running the day-to-day operations. So if you're in a borough where you don't have a mayor, it's like Amy said, that has those day-to-day executive responsibilities, it's more likely that the council might be making the appointments as opposed to the mayor. But this is a different system
Right.
in that you have the mayor as the,
Chief executive.
Chief
right.
executive.
right, chief executive running the day.
Yeah.
are you going to start?
In the boroughs, councils do that.
Yeah, boroughs
Oh,
have
yes.
mayors.
Yeah,
Right.
okay.
But I think they gave us basically cities with strong mayors. The charters they gave us were cities with strong mayors.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah, they didn't give
No,
us.
Altoona is not the chief executive.
Right.
Yeah, Altoona is not a chief executive, right?
Okay, I think that gives us enough that we can work on draft language and bring back to you for the office of the mayor. And with that, we're going to move to departments.
We did pass out and send by email a new guide on the appointed officials. And the appointed officials tonight will be looking at our solicitor, city engineer, acting mayor if desired, and and the business administrator and other department heads. So we have a lot to go through. We'll start with the solicitor. Patty, do you have that description of the solicitor? This is from the city's website?
Yes.
So the current optional Plan A for the solicitor's position, council provides by ordinance for the manner of an appointment and compensation of a city solicitor, which can also be a law firm. The city solicitor shall have direction and control the legal matters of the city, and unless authorized by council, a department of the city may not employ or retain any additional counsel in any manner or cause. They can't, their department can't hire a lawyer to sue their city. They would still have to be represented by the city's attorney. All right, so we're going to go through the process of appointing the solicitor. The solicitor is appointed at the organizational meeting of city council. That's every 2 years or time to time as requested by council, but every 2 years at a minimum, we're requiring an organization of council, new election for president of council and organization. The solicitor is currently appointed, you're appointed at the organizational meeting and this, because of the law office? You're permanent, you're in-house, per the ordinance, okay. The ordinance, I guess I have to ask this, but I know we talked about this.
I'm appointed under the ordinance subject for the term, concomitantly with the term of the mayor.
Okay, it's with the term of the mayor, okay,
Similar to the department heads.
okay.
We were treated the same way.
Should we keep,
So then they don't have to get appointed at the organizational.
they don't have to. If the way the ordinance is set up now,
One of the organizational meetings of council, he'll already have been appointed.
by the mayor, unless the mayor is, that's a newly elected mayor's term.
Right.
So
Right.
every 4 years, in a sense, the solicitor would be appointed.
The ordinance models.
That's current right now.
Currently.
Right.
The ordinance models the way department heads.
Right. Okay.
But I think Commissioner Byrd wanted to know, are you technically a department head? I thought you were not, despite the fact that it's
You
set
just
up
follow
like
the
that.
guidelines.
I am not a department head, so the solicitor's office falls under our organizational chart, under the office of the mayor. It is not a separate department, so the departments the city has set forth in the organizational chart are
And
neighborhood
fire,
engagement, community planning, economic development, public works, Bureau of Police, Fire Bureau, and then Department of Administrative Services.
So the appointment is every 2 years, you're saying?
Now it's every 4.
4 years,
It's every
unless
four.
unless the mayor did not serve a full term, in which case then it would be, my term runs with the term of the mayor, just like the department heads. So the department heads are appointed in the year the mayor is elected.
And that's the current law of the city, and that's the current ordinance and structure and set up in the organizational chart. When the charter is enacted, the ordinances will carry over unless they're changed by the action of the charter. Right now, you can maintain the city solicitor's office as it is. And it will be appointed from time to time by ordinance, is how the language would read.
So as solicitor, you have obligations to issue legal opinions, not just to the administration, but also the council upon their request?
Yes.
And what does it take for them for you to respond to that request? Does it require a vote for a legal opinion, or if a counselor says, please share me your opinion?
To date, if a counselor has asked for my opinion, I give it.
Okay.
I work with them the same way I work with department heads, bureau chiefs in the city. If what they're asking requires the council as an entity to be involved, then I would point back that we need to have a discussion and council needs to approve that sort of work. So for example, if they said, a single council member said, you have to, go file suit against somebody. Well, no, that has to be an action that
By
is
council.
either directed by the mayor or under some ordinance directed by city council as an entity. But if they're asking for advice, where it's appropriate, I will give advice to any employee, in the city, bureau head, bureau chief, supervisor, department head, city council.
And how do you deal with a conflict where maybe the mayor has a position on something and the council has a position on something that differs, and both seek your legal advice?
If my legal advice is my legal advice. If there's going to be an actual legal dispute between the two, then it's my obligation to obtain independent counsel for both of them.
You've gone through that before, right?
Which I've done in past as outside counsel when we were in that position. It rarely happens where there's actually a legal dispute between the city council and the mayor. The legal interpretation is the legal interpretation, and I've often obtained second opinions from independent counsel where there's questions raised just to give people different views. But if there's an actual conflict, and the conflict would be that they're adverse to one another, my legal obligation is to make sure that both have independent and competent legal counsel. And as the solicitor, my job would be to make sure that both are being served.
Do you have the same obligation to the controller
In terms of,
if there is a legal conflict between the executive and the elected controller's office?
well, again, I'm the solicitor for the city. So in two cases in the city's history, the city council and the administration have actually had to take action against either the controller or the treasurer for failure to perform or failure to do something that they felt was required under the law.
But you were to serve,
In that case, I served the city, which was city council and the administration, in opposition to the controller or the treasurer.
and you do not have an obligation to serve. Did you have to secure outside counsel for the controller?
No, in that case, because we believe they were derelict of their duties, no. They were required to get their own counsel.
Thanks.
But if the controller came to you with an issue that was with the city, you would give the controller or the
Absolutely, and have done
treasurer?
that, and have done that currently. Yes.
I don't have a problem with the way the solicitor's office or position is currently structured.
That could be the first choice we make. If you prefer to keep the current structure and organization of the city solicitor, it is an ordinance, and any action the charter would contrary to that would have to be changed by the ordinance. The ordinance would be changed by action of the charter. So if the first decision is you want to keep it the way it is, that's valid. That's valid. It's set by ordinance, so that's valid. That's a valid action.
I just want to question that it can be a law firm or the solicitor, and how is that determined? Versus, I guess, a solicitor or hiring a
Well,
law
that's the
firm.
determination. If the mayor appoints the solicitor, then the mayor is making the recommendation to council.
To hire, just a solicitor
to move it
versus a law
outside
firm.
versus inside, correct. And I encourage you keeping that broad language, and the reason I say that is, there may come a time where there's no one that's serving for the city that's capable of handling the duties, and you may want, let's say, I had an office of, most of the other third-class cities have much larger legal offices than we do. So, one is a rarity, 3 and more is the regular. But let's assume that I was not able to handle the duties for whatever reason. If you couldn't find somebody you wanted to hire to be in my place inside as an employee, you would certainly want the flexibility to protect the city to hire a law firm that could provide those legal services.
So you could do both.
Yes, the mayor could appoint
That's
a law firm
right.
or an individual person. The charter will allow both. It'll give a very broad latitude to the mayor for selection and representation. All right, that's currently the way it is, so that's a good point.
I only have two real questions to raise. I think it would be interesting to, if we do appoint a firm, to at least say that the lead attorney for the body being served should be specified, and just not necessarily needs to be set in stone. Like if the firm changes who's the attorney, just notify the city. But I think it'd be important to know who the lead is and who the assistant solicitor is essentially in that firm.
I will tell you that typically in the past, Tony, they have named an individual. So like,
Okay.
when my law firm was named, it was Robert Fonnebecker and the firm of Zimmerman, Fonnebecker, Nuffer, and Howard. You typically wouldn't name a second person in the firm because people inside law firms do too, right? Like they're not employed by the same firms all the time. And in the instance that Mr. Fonnebecker couldn't serve, the firm was there, and it was primarily my responsibility for many years to do a lot of the work. That's the way it's typically done historically, not just here, but in other places that appoint outside counsel.
Okay.
But the historic resolutions, if you were to go back and pull them,
They
you would have had
specify.
that. Yeah, you would have had, I believe, Mr. Hartman and Underhill and Brubaker during a period in the 1990s. And then I can't remember who it was from Barley Snyder, but Barley Snyder was an outside counsel that was solicitor in the 80s. And they would have had an individual that was the primary name and would have put the resolution.
Okay. Then my only other question for the commission is maybe breaking out the planning commission. Like I know that the MPC regulates that the zoning hearing board and the planning commission do need to have separate legal counsel. I would be interested to hear what the commission thinks about breaking out the planning commission, since it is one of the, in the county, it's one of the more powerful planning commissions.
I don't
Planning
understand what
commission
you're
is
saying.
not required to have separate counsel, but the zoning hearing
Right,
So he's recommended, right?
like maybe making that requirement for planning commission as well.
Could you explain why the planning commission should have an independent counsel?
Well, the planning commission has a lot of power, and I mean, I'm on the planning commission. We recently had a little bit of an awkward situation regarding the bathroom being installed, which we were in full support of, but it was just really awkward. So it might be nice to have more focused legal counsel on the planning commission side of things.
Still not sure I understand.
Yeah,
what the
it's
problem
not
is.
clear enough for me.
Just
Sorry.
tell it like it is, that's it.
Well, I think the question is, where would the conflict in having
I don't get
the
it.
city solicitor also be the solicitor for the planning commission? Why would, I guess my question is, why would that,
They're following
why would there
their
be a
own
conflict of
calendar.
interest?
Right.
Right, they're following our salad. So with the bathroom, we had to retroactively approve a plan, and I felt even weird. I didn't even comment on it in the meeting because, I'm in support of the restroom, but it was just a very awkward situation to be in. There are many times on planning commission that I'm like, is this in line with X, Y, or Z? I guess as a commissioner, it might make me feel more confident that we aren't being pressured to do something.
So I will say that I think it's two questions. One is whether I think the real question is whether planning commission should have regularly assigned counsel. That's a different question than should that come under the solicitor's office to assign that counsel. There are two separate questions there. Currently in the city, the zoning hearing board does have independent counsel as required by the municipality planning code. The way the city was set up before I came on board as in-house counsel, the way it's operated historically, is that if the planning commission wanted counsel, they would have to reach out and then counsel could be provided. I can tell you that there have been times where we've arranged for counsel to represent the planning commission in the last 2 years where we thought there were some contested matters or complicated matters that I was made aware of that might be coming before it.
Okay.
So I think your question is really one that maybe is not a charter question, but is more of a procedure question, which is, should the current planning commission under the current structure have counsel or get more counsel?
Okay.
And that's certainly a discussion that can be had independent of the charter discussion,
Sure.
because I am obligated to provide legal services currently to all of the city's boards and commissions. And so I think if the planning commission were to say, we want, active counsel, we want more active counsel, we could talk about what that would look like and make accommodations to do so.
So the requirement for independent counsel for zoning hearing board, Why is that? Why is that?
It's state law.
State,
Municipalities planning.
So it's not up to us.
No,
Right.
the reason for that is the municipality may appeal or challenge a decision made by the zoning hearing board. They are a quasi judicial body.
Okay.
They make rulings, so,
Right.
Right.
yeah.
Until approximately 1988, it was fairly common for the municipal solicitor to serve both as the municipal solicitor and a zoning hearing board solicitor. There was a Supreme Court decision that basically said, no, you can't do that. They are entitled to have their own independent counsel under the municipality's planning code. You know, if the city can actually be an adverse party to the zoning
To the
hearing.
zoning hearing board.
Right.
And
So to me, this sounds like something that perhaps we'd addressed when we get to the ABCs, the authorities, council,
Could be, yes.
commissions, and boards,
Mhm.
with some kind of, I don't know, very general statement that if X can, whatever,
request
Field
separate legal
requests.
advice.
I don't know what it's gonna say, but
But you're right, you could put it in the authorities, boards, and commissions.
I don't know if it needs to be in with how the solicitor is appointed.
Because this is more blanket, and we're talking more specific when it comes to authorities, boards, and commissions.
Right.
Good point.
That makes sense.
All right.
Yeah, that's good.
Is your compensation set by budget or by ordinance? How does that work?
Set by budget order.
It's set by the budget ordinance, so it's every year. So a council in effect sets your, okay, so the question was council sets the compensation. The council does set the compensation by enacting the budget ordinance every year. So that's how it is now.
I'm
Okay.
good with that.
You know, this might be a conversation for the referendum section. I'm not sure, but to the points about written opinions, I think one of my frustrations with the current process for referendums on the third-class city code is that, like, let's say something was successful. Let's take the success aspect of of the petitioning effort out of it. My concern is that somebody might put forward a ordinance that is not congruent with law, and I would be interested, maybe not right now, but determining a way that a member of the public who wants to go through that process could also get the solicitor's opinion prior to those ordinances being required, the secondary set of signatures needed, just to ensure that whatever could be put forward to the citizens for referendum is consistent with law.
I don't really understand, but when we get there.
Initially, it's usually
Yeah.
Yeah,
of
I think
the
you're right.
petition
It
or
sounds like it's part
the
of
wording of
Yeah.
the ordinance. So-
Discussion for the.
Yeah.
Initiative
that
and
meeting.
referendum
Yeah.
portion.
Okay,
I just figured I should mention something now.
Yeah.
All right.
No.
everything.
okay.
You're like
Everything's
always kicking
later.
us off.
Okay, and we're maintaining the current structure largely. The solicitor will represent the city and the city as the client, an important distinction, and serves as chief legal advisor to the mayor, council, all city departments, agencies, with the exception of the zoning hearing board. So that's a yes? I think we all said that's a yes?
Yes.
And the next one seems simple enough to,
Well,
Go ahead.
we
Go ahead,
jumped
Darlene.
ahead because I didn't see where you said the solicitor shall be a member of the bar of the Supreme Court. A lot of the charters say.
okay, yeah, well, let's ask
Oh, we
that.
didn't get there yet?
Well,
think
I
we
skipped
jumped ahead.
over it.
Yes.
I skipped over because it's the office of the law, but that's okay. The solicitor shall be a member of the bar, shall be sworn, to be able to practice before the bar,
Sounds good.
and experience
Well,
in
most of the
municipal law.
charter- Most of the charters say have a license to practice in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, that's a
They
member of the
don't
bar.
say, yeah, they don't say, I mean, I'm just saying, their
Right.
language is have a license to practice in Pennsylvania.
Either way is
What's
okay.
the difference?
Yeah.
I was just gonna
Well,
say, what?
I don't know. I'm
Is
just-
that the
it's
same
different
thing?
language.
Having a license and being,
You can't be a member of the bar of the Supreme Court without
But
having
have a
a
license.
license.
Right.
That's what I.
but
Yeah,
you
have to
you
be-
can be licensed and not be a member of the.
You do not, as a Pennsylvania licensed attorney, have to be technically a member of be admitted as a member of the bar of the Supreme Court.
Right.
In fact, many attorneys do not.
Right.
It's just a,
I think it's
What's-
harder.
So no pun intended, but it's a higher bar that you have to be
you
a
don't have
member.
to pass anything or pass any
So-
tests or anything.
Okay,
So
It's
what,
really just joining and going and, you get two attorneys to sponsor you and say you're in good standing, and then you go
and is this the entity that like does the reviews
That bar.
of judges and et cetera
Well,
before
the Supreme
elections?
Court- The Supreme Court of Pennsylvania enforces all of the ethical rules against
Oh,
bar members.
okay, yeah.
You know, if there's an ethical
So Board of
violation,
Judicial
the
Conduct.
Supreme Court
Yeah.
controls that.
Yeah, there's judicial
Whether,
conduct.
whether
right?
you're a member of the Supreme Court bar or not, doesn't matter. As a licensed Pennsylvania attorney, that's who that is.
Right. So can that language be changed to license to practice law
So you
in
want a lower
Pennsylvania?
threshold?
It's not a lower threshold, like he said, it's just any member can, but I think it limits, as Peter always says, limits our pool if we're saying they have to be a member of the bar. Because they don't,
Of the
that's up
Supreme
to
Court.
them if they want
Remember,
to
you
do
have to
that.
pass your bar exam to
Yeah.
practice in Pennsylvania.
Because you have
Yeah.
to, right,
Court.
so the license to practice, you have to do that anyway.
Right, you have to pass the bar exam, but to be a
Right,
member of
but-
the bar of the Supreme Court requires a different set of rules
Exactly.
that might not be relevant to municipal government?
I mean, it sets a higher standard, doesn't it?
Not
I will
really.
tell you, I don't
It's
really
an
think it's much of a higher
organization. That's
standard.
not
I'm just
a
being,
high
I'm a member. So,
Right.
in order to become a member, when I moved to Pennsylvania in 1994, I was already a member of the Maryland Bar and the Maryland Bar of the Supreme Court.
Mhm.
Took my bar exam in Pennsylvania, so I took a second bar exam, passed it, became licensed in Pennsylvania, and then decided to become a member of the Bar of the Supreme Court. That required, there's an application that you fill out. You need 2 attorneys who are members of a district court. In this case, it was the, 2 of my partners, and they submit me for membership. And you can also, you do the same thing with all the way up through the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania on the federal level.
But how would that be, I guess, going to her concern, how is that blocking some candidates? I mean, it would, I'm thinking, the way you're explaining it, that it actually means that if you have to have a recommendation by your peers or your colleagues, and that's, in a way, that's like saying, hey, you are in good standing, or others see that you are, or
That's all it really is. I mean, it's paying annual fees. I mean, I'm licensed.
Doing it.
I can appear in court without that. There's nothing that
It doesn't do anything.
does. Even if I wanted to appear before the Supreme Court and argue,
You could.
as a member, I'm automatically granted. Even if I wasn't, I would be approved to be able to do so. By being a licensed attorney, it would just be a request.
The broadest language would be a licensed attorney in Pennsylvania, and the second part of that is experience in municipal law. That's the narrowing of it. So the broadest part would be a licensed attorney, but then you would narrow it to experience in municipal law.
Right.
Okay,
And
so,
I'm not weighing in with
I'm good
opinions
with
one way or the other, because in all honesty,
Yeah.
for me, licensed with experience is the most important
Yeah.
qualification. There are lots of attorneys who have bar memberships in many
Don't
places.
know.
There are little certificates on your wall. It's really the experience, I think, that is
Mhm.
relevant.
Yeah.
That's my personal opinion.
so we can say licensed attorney in Pennsylvania
With experience.
with experience in municipal law. So you just can't hire a
Right,
newly
right,
licensed attorney.
Exactly.
You have to demonstrated experience. The mayors would have to go to the council with a candidate that has both a license and experience.
Yes.
Is that what we're hearing? So we're removing the bar of Pennsylvania requirement,
see, I-
replacing it with the,
I disagree with that.
Okay,
I
well, let's-
want to keep the higher level. It may be
Not high.
pro forma, it may be just a technicality, but it also says that somebody up above has said this person's okay.
okay, let's ask this then. I guess it's self-evident that it's experience in municipal law, show of hands. Experience in municipal law, okay? Have to do it. Member of the bar of the Supreme Court, in addition to being licensed attorney. Show of hands.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's
This is, yes, you're going to the bar. You have to-
Yes.
I'm on the fence, like.
Well, the question is, my thought is, well, why would you not? And if a person does not want to go through that little hurdle of becoming a member of the bar of the Supreme Court, in order to do this, is that really the kind of person you want as the solicitor?
So I
What-
kind of changed my mind on this, and the way I kind of thought about it was that I wouldn't want there to be a situation where somebody's ability to serve in this role, if they were selected by the mayor and approved by the council, was in some way rescinded because of this external body to the city.
All right, I'm
So
okay with that.
I started out kind of saying like, yeah, that seems very smart, and the more we talk about it, I'm
All
finding
right,
myself
that's
convinced
a
by
good point. I don't care.
I'll remain my
So-
minority of one here, but
No,
I still,
for you too.
okay,
Okay, what do we have, 3 hands, 2 hands?
there's 2 of us.
Okay, those that want a licensed member of the bar in Pennsylvania,
With experience.
a member of the bar of the Supreme Court.
Well, I thought we
That
asked
was
that
the two
question.
of us.
That's
There
not
was
what you-
three. So,
Which question are you asking?
I'm calling the opposite question.
Yeah.
We only saw three hands for that question, so I assume those that would be happy with the licensed member of the bar in Pennsylvania. Yes?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
that's
Not-
different than
not-
Mr.
not-
Not bar of the Supreme Court.
Not bars.
The licensed attorney, I'm sorry, it's a member of the bar,
Licensed
but it's a
attorney.
licensed
Licensed
attorney.
attorney.
I apologize, licensed attorney, I
Yes,
apologize.
licensed attorney.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
I was counting the nod as good as a, yes, yeah. All right, thank you for indulging me. We go on to the, what we did discuss before we went back to the bar. The solicitor represents the city in all legal proceedings,
Can I weigh in that that's not accurate currently?
okay?
Because we use counsel that are not solicitor for multiple legal proceedings.
Okay,
If we have specialty matters that require other counsel, litigation included, we will hire that attorney to appear in those cases.
are they under the office of the solicitor, or are they
They're
separate?
working under the solicitor's direction, but they're outside counsel.
All right,
It sounds like you're saying maybe we just need
Sir.
some, if we agree to the concept generally, we need some kind of caveat to acknowledge that you have some way of directing.
or his,
Could we
already
say-
have a provision- You already have a provision that says the solicitor is in control of all the affairs. The current ordinance also, as does the third-class city code, allows for counsel to appoint special counsel, which is what we do regularly. If we bring in outside counsel, we have it approved by council through a resolution, and then they can proceed under my direction. So I think you can even just eliminate the question.
okay,
I think it's covered, but that's just, if you want to keep it the way it is.
you got that? Okay. And I
I
just-
think they're dealing with
Yeah.
Which question are we on?
solicitor
That's-
shall
that's
represent the
question
city.
was- Yeah,
Last
his
one.
direction.
Okay,
It's
that's
all
fine.
state legal
All,
proceedings.
trick word is, the word is all.
It's under- Yeah. I think that question.
Yes, we said yes.
All right, well, that is, we'll use this information to draft a charter article on appointed officials for the solicitor. I think that's it for me. Fred, you want to do an engineer?
It has to be both.
Now to
Yeah, we can
city
ask, but I'm pretty sure that's what's
Yeah,
happening.
you're right.
Can I get some clarity
Yeah.
on, for an indefinite term, it was implied no,
It was implied no,
because
Because it's concurrent with the mayor.
concurrent with
Yeah.
the mayor,
Yeah.
right?
So I read it.
Yeah, I have that circled, no. Those three, those first two questions rather were in case you wanted to change the current ordinance and change
Okay.
the structure.
One question I have, in looking at the city engineer and going back to the solicitor, under the current plan, the city engineer shall serve at the pleasure of council. Does the solicitor not serve at the pleasure of council? Can council fire you?
No, I mean, again, I'm
He's not a
treated the same way as
department
the
head.
department heads are.
Okay. So that's a no?
It's really for the mayor.
Yes.
I actually have a really abstract question. Does the assistant solicitor also have to meet the same requirements as the solicitor?
Well, there's no requirement to have an assistant solicitor,
Right.
so,
It could just be anybody. Is what
well,
I'm saying.
there's no requirement to have an assistant, period.
Right, but I'm saying if there was one, would they have to meet the same
If I
requirements?
was to hire additional attorneys to be in the solicitor's office, I would tell you I wouldn't hire anybody that's not a licensed attorney.
Well,
That would be part of the job
Put
description.
that in.
the reason I asked is because it says council may appoint.
Special
Where is that?
counsel or assistant solicitors, right? Those are the language that we've used in the past.
Yeah, that's the current language. That's the current optional plan
That's the
language.
current.
That's the optional.
What is it that you're
Ordinance
concerned
allows-
That they-
I'm not really concerned. I'm just curious, like, if council could appoint someone to assist Barry who's not a licensed attorney. Like,
Right.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Some states allow you to, practice the law
He's just saying put the
and then get your bar later, like New York, Vermont, Washington, and California, I think. But I'm curious if the assistant solicitor has to be of the same status
Well,
as Barry.
I will tell you that they can't practice as an attorney if they're not licensed.
Right, but they can still assist you in some
Well, I mean, I
capacity.
have people in my office that are not attorneys currently. So we have a paralegal and a procurement coordinator, neither of which are an attorney. But they're not called attorney, and I don't call them an assistant solicitor, and I don't call them special counsel. I would tell you, in answer to your question, yes, they'd have to be a licensed attorney.
Okay.
If they were going to serve in the role of attorney, they would need to be licensed.
Okay.
Okay, Okay, let's move to city engineer. We'll try to get through this one and then move to the review of the council article. The city has a Bureau of Engineering that is headed by a city engineer, and the Bureau performs several mandated functions that include maintenance of the official city plan, assignment of city addresses, preparation of public works construction plans and specifications, review of subdivision and land development plans as required by the MPC. Currently, under the optional Plan A provisions, council shall provide for the manner of appointment and compensation of the city solicitor. City solicitor shall be
Engineer.
Engineer.
Excuse me, the city engineer shall be a registered professional engineer in the Commonwealth and serve at the pleasure of council. Nothing in this section shall be construed to prohibit council from designating an engineering firm of registered professional engineers from performing the duties and functions of the city engineer. Control of engineering matters. City engineers shall have the supervision, direction, and control of the engineering matters of the city. Unless authorized by council, a department of the city may not employ or retain additional engineers.
Is the current city engineer Cindy McCormick or Stephen Campbell?
The current city engineer is City McCormick.
Thank you.
There is no Bureau of Engineering in the city, so our ordinance is, we have a city engineer, we have engineers, but there's no Bureau of Engineering. I believe almost all of our engineers, not all of them, work somewhere inside the Department of Public Works in one of the 4 bureaus there in multiple capacities.
Unless authorized by the council, a department of the city may not employ or retain additional engineers. Is there any good reason to have that restriction? I suspect the city engineer role corresponds to, I'm reading Fred from your memo. The city engineer role, it corresponds to something in state law, and I get why that's like a title, I guess. I don't quite understand why we would want to carry over this prohibition on employing or retaining additional engineers without the approval of council. Why would we want that?
I would think you would, if you were to hire an outside engineering firm of some sort, I think you're looking at having that outside engineering firm be approved by council in some manner.
So if the Department of Public Works, who has a chief engineer, says, we actually need another engineer, we're doing so much, they would have to go to council to get approval to do that, even if it's already in the budget.
Currently, yes.
I think that's silly.
Do they
We
do
should
that?
get rid of it.
No,
But you agree that that's what it says?
I don't know what he's reading. I will tell you that that's not what's currently operating, the way we currently operate.
Okay,
All of our, I mean, those are professional consultants that are operating and doing work independently. They're not serving in the capacity of the city engineer. And so I don't view just hiring an engineer to do engineering services is prohibited.
what I heard Carl say was that if it was in the budget, right? There's the Department of Public
Well, I
Works-
guess that is what I said, but I guess I really just mean, if there's money available to do XYZ thing, and they need to bring an engineer to do it, I wouldn't want it to be the case that, sorry, can't do it because council has to say so, even if there's already funds set aside, maybe not for the purpose of hiring an engineer, but for doing the project. You know what I mean?
Oh, if it's part of the project, it's authorized.
That council's
Oh, if
already
it's a part of the project.
I'm- And as part of the projects,
I'll also tell you that, you know, and I don't want to, you're giving a narrow reading to the third-class city code. You're not bringing in certain provisions of the optional charter law that
Okay.
give broader powers to the administration.
You made me
for
feel
budgets
better.
adopted.
Thank
So,
you.
okay.
I'll
You know,
let this go.
without getting into it, from my perspective, the rationale for a city engineer is that there has to be somebody that can sign off, register, to put a seal and signature on plans.
Right.
The way modern, you know, we have 2 utilities, really 3 if you include stormwater. The requirements as set forth here would be awfully restrictive.
Go to the next page. The next page is where we have the optional Plan A,
That is-
chart, engineer, right?
Like,
That's where that language
this is just what I'm getting from this conversation is that like, we're talking about the city engineer and like council would have to approve hiring like a second the city engineer versus a engineer who works for the city.
I like that answer.
I don't think that's what this says, so.
Yeah, we're not talking about employees here. We're talking about external, the engagement of an external engineering firm.
It'd be like having an in-house counsel and adding a law firm also as solicitor.
As special
But
counsel.
So can I just back up? We don't have a Bureau of Engineering, right?
It's under the Department of Public Works.
Right.
Engineering services are under the
That's
Department of
under
Public
I
Works.
pulled that from either
We got that from the
or
website.
budget.
We pulled that from the website.
We don't currently have a
Okay.
Bureau of Engineering.
That comes in the.
Is this something where the standard is met by kind of looking and quacking like a duck?
We have 4 basic bureaus in the Department of Public Works, none of which is called the Bureau of Engineering. There are engineers that work in each. There is a city engineer, which is, as you pointed out, the city of McCormick. There was in the past a Bureau of Engineering,
Right.
going back into the early 90s.
I swear that's the website.
There is not, with the restructuring that's been done over the last several years, currently a Bureau of Engineering.
Okay,
So,
that makes sense to
do
me.
we think it's efficient not having the Bureau of Engineering?
I don't think you should mandate a bureau.
I agree
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah.
Again,
I do too.
if you're trying to draft a charter that allows the flexibility for your government to change and adapt as times, I think restrictive is not the best call there. I think the language that you quoted in the optional plan, to me, that supersedes the third-class city code. And so that's far broader than what you were reading earlier, and that's how we've been operating under that provision.
Right, but I guess sitting on the Home Rule Commission, one of our goals is efficiency with financing, and I'm saying, would it be wiser or more efficient having that Bureau of Engineer? How did it work back then? Was
I think
more
the reason
getting
it changed
done?
is because it wasn't more efficient.
Is that what?
That's
Because
the reason they moved on from that. But
Yeah.
But I mean, I think maybe back then in the 90s, that's what they did. But we know now that the Department of Public Works has taken on so much
Right.
that it's so big that we wonder how efficient it's really being. Because like you said, now you have 4 different bureaus is operating all under the Public Works Department, under one department.
To me,
And
yeah.
I just question. I just see how things happen in the city, and I'm like, would it be better if it was split up? Because right
the Bureau
now
would
it's a
still be
lot.
under the Department of Public Works.
Right.
I mean, you're really not,
It's a Bureau of
you're really not making a change there, Ms. Bird, is what I'm
Okay.
saying. Like, that bureau would still be within the Department of Public Works. So now you'd have 5 bureaus.
I think the
Got it.
structure should be held at the department level
Not
from the
here.
charter.
Okay.
Right. From a charter
Gotcha.
standpoint, only deal with departments, and then the departments have the flexibility to create a
Okay.
structure that best meets their needs.
Okay.
Going to the city engineer itself, should they be appointed at the organizational meeting? Or as is the case with the solicitor, done consistent with the term of the mayor?
I think that the arrangement for the city engineer should be as close to a regular employee of the city as possible, serving at the pleasure of the mayor. Because I think there are some things on the solicitor side where it's like the solicitor has to serve different parts of the government. The city engineer, in my opinion, really only serves the mayor. They might report to the director of public works, but they're a city employee, and I think the charter should reflect that.
I mean, technically, according to this, they serve at the pleasure of council.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think what Carl is suggesting is that perhaps this is too strict, too narrow, and what Barry has been saying is what happens is more broad.
The current practice is very much consistent with how Carl has described it. And in fact, even when we had a Bureau of Engineering, I mean, they were hired essentially by the Department of Public Works, the mayor. They are working on, I mean, the real rationale for a quote city engineer, forget it, is not because of anything other than you need somebody licensed that can put stamps on, a sealed stamp on plans. For the most part, practically, for a city our size and with the operations, most of the design work is being done, by outside engineering firms and then reviewed, approved, and guided by the engineers on staff at the city. And then ultimately, there are some plans that require stamps and seals, and that's why you have the requirement for a city engineer. I think it was different in the, early 1900s and through when these provisions started to be adopted by the state legislature. And there was concern that, municipalities, boroughs, third-class cities, small cities, keep in mind, they're third-class cities with only a couple thousand residents, right? Would build buildings or do something without an engineer approving it. And so these were precautionary provisions that were built into a code over decades.
So do we need a city engineer? Or could we achieve the same outcomes by language that requires
Outside.
stuff to be properly sealed by a
I think
licensed
there are
engineer?
times where there requires
Like that would make
somebody with the designation of city engineer to sign a stamp or a plan, both at a state level and others. So I would say that you probably need to at least make sure that somebody can meet that qualification, whether it would be appointed by the mayor or the director of public works to serve in that capacity versus the formality of the city council, and whether you would want to reserve that for the administrative
Right.
code is another option.
I mean, somebody within the Department of Public, I mean, I guess maybe this is what you said a minute ago, like, currently, Cindy McCormick is, she's doing work all day long within the realm of the Department of Public Works.
Yes.
And she's also designated as the city engineer. So when something requires the city engineer to do something, she's the person to do it.
You could address this in the department portion of the charter when you get to Department of Public Works and direct that one of the responsibilities of the Director of Public Works is to make sure that, that the city has retained it and designated an individual as a city engineer, meeting all the requisite qualifications.
Yeah, I mean, that's where my brain is at, is like, why is this particular position called out as something that has to be appointed in this structure? Why is it the department head of public works not just determining who that person is by hiring them or knowing they have someone on staff who meets the qualifications and making that their responsibility?
And again,
Or
I think-
deciding we're gonna hire somebody out,
Right.
whatever.
Again, I think historically when these municipal codes were drafted, they were dealing with municipalities from, 500 residents up to third-class cities like ours in times when they wanted to assure that the appropriate professional qualifications existed on the staff or within the realm of the city to do certain works. I think you can slice that piece of bread a different way, like I said, and making sure it's a responsibility of the Department of Public Works to have whether an employee or somebody designated to serve in the capacity of engineering and to make sure that engineering plans are done correctly. You could also require, as the codes have in the past, that somebody be appointed as city engineer. In our current setup, the city engineer, it's really, again, a designation for purposes of being able to say I'm the city engineer and sign those stamps. There isn't, the other functions that were typically set up under those codes, we've morphed away from that because of the way we operate our city. And again, your study commission looking at the city of Lancaster, these were codes drafted for multitudes of cities that operate in multiple ways. So your opportunity now is to craft something for the city, and I think your questions are appropriate.
I think the other way to look at it too, if you look at both of these positions are professional licensed positions
Right.
where you have to have you don't need to be a professional licensed whatever to be the head of public works, right? But as Barry said, when you're signing off on these plans, somebody needs to have that license, that requirements, like the solicitor, you need to have that, as we've decided, that professional license. So I think that might be one reason they're, also why they're treated a little bit different.
So there's a person in the city that says, this is the person, this person has a responsibility, and we're not going to change that next week, and so on. And with that, I actually want to make one addition. Nowhere here does it say that the person has to be a civil engineer. And that's a very important aspect, that the person should be a degreed civil or environmental engineer. Being a registered professional engineer, I can tell you, does not mean that the person knows anything about sewers, roads, rainwater, and so on. From my own perspective, if you want to operate a nuclear plant, I'm your professional engineer you want to hire. I can do that. I would not want to sign off on a sewer system because I know nothing about it, but I am a registered professional engineer. So
I just want to interrupt to say, we were talking about 45 minutes and we're coming up on 30 minutes.
Thank you for saying that.
Yeah, maybe we just hold this, because I think it should be addressed in the department heads for the engineer position.
Yeah.
I don't think it needs to be an appointment.
I agree.
And I know that a lot of engineer work is done outside, and it gets stamped, and then they just need their approval. Like most people or construction companies that are doing projects, they get an engineer that gets that project to that point that it's approved. So I think we need to have somebody on staff, but I don't think it needs to be an appointment. We can address it in the
By council.
department heads.
Yeah.
If there is agreement, then we will move this to the discussion about departments and embody it in the structure of the departments. Okay. With that, and as Mr. Dasker said, we're
Good time.
at a point where we need
I'm just looking
to
at time.
begin to discuss draft language that has been put together, and we distributed that to the commission.
No, that's right.
Don't worry, because I got a lot to say.
Don't worry, okay, now I'm worried.
Yeah,
So if we're going to get into the draft,
yeah. Why don't we just start section by section if we can,
all
Carl?
right, never mind, then I'll wait because mine's.
We'll get it in real time on the screen. Read the section, so 201. If there's general agreement on that as written, we can move on to the next section.
Section
fine.
201
I'll
is the broad grant of powers that are vested in city council. Any comments or discussion on that? Section 202, composition of council, composed of 7 members elected at large by the voters of the city. That was the consensus that was reached.
Yeah, I have some things to say about that. So currently it's Mayor's Neighborhood Month. One of the practices of Mayor's Neighborhood Month is that there's essentially an event in every quadrant of the city. It's a long-standing understanding that there are 4 quadrants of the city to the point that it's implicitly understood that each quadrant gets this level of attention. It kind of blows my mind that we're not talking about ensuring that we move forward with that direction as far as the representation of council. I still feel like we should be moving to a 9-member system with 5 at large and 4, 1 from each quadrant, however we determine the quadrants to be. I understand mapping needs to be done. It's not going to be perfect, but I just feel like it makes sense.
I think that we needed to have more conversation about it, and we left it where I know that at one of these meetings, we said we didn't have, motion failed, and we were going to discuss it. We wanted to discuss it, and the motion failed, and so we didn't. I didn't feel that I had enough information. I've said it before, and I'm not saying I'm totally ruling that out. I still wanted to consider that, and that's kind of where I'm at with it.
To me, this is an issue that we've gone back and forth on many, many times. The consensus has been repeatedly that we are having a council of 7 members elected at large, and that hasn't changed. So, the discussion to me is we've discussed it. Whether there is additional information, the consensus was we were fine with the information we had, and so we moved on.
I gotta disagree with you on the being fine with the information we had, and I wish Ms. Cook were here tonight. Unfortunately, she had that conflict because Ms. Cook was kind of the quote-unquote swing vote, if you will. And if my memory serves me correctly, it was Ms. Elias, Ms. Rufo, and Ms. Cook who are like interested but wanting to learn more. And it was frankly just the nuance of how we decided that night that's gotten the conversation to this point. And then we started taking formal votes versus informal votes, and that has frustrated me deeply.
Yes,
Yeah,
I agree.
I agree with that.
And I agree.
I didn't feel that, the way that I understood it, it was that we could come back to it and discuss it further and gather more information, because I still felt that I wanted to hear more, and so I felt that that's, if that's what we're doing and we're coming back and discussing it now, I feel like this is what we should, I didn't feel that it was a final, I guess, because thought that I heard repeatedly that we could still have opportunities to discuss this.
Like, is this an item we should break out and have some other subcommittee for, I guess, is a question to ask the commission.
I don't think we should take a vote. There's only 8 members here, and it'll be a tie, and until we change those laws or our bylaws that we're operating, how we would decide how a tie works.
Or wait until
Right.
we
Do we
have.
know?
Wait
Be a
till we
tie?
have
It would be a
We
tie.
don't, but I'm just saying,
I think we
you
should-
know,
I mean, if there's-
it would be, that's where it was before when the motion was passed.
Right.
So why go back and do it when we only have 8 members? Wait till all 9 members are here and then call the question to see. Or we start talking about how are we going to deal with a tie?
This first time around was 6-3
Right, and then it went
It-
4-4. And
Yeah.
then,
on a separate question.
but it was still about redistricting.
It was still about
It was
redistricting.
still about redistricting, getting more information to make decisions.
I thought it was 5-4, by the way.
I would offer, if we go back to January, at the end of the study phase, the discussion was we felt that the current optional plan A that the city was operating under generally worked, and that with some tweaking that could be embodied in a charter, we were using the Plan A, the optional Plan A as the basis. And that optional Plan A provided for the 7-member council elected at large. As you discuss this matter, I think, I would just go back to that vote, which was a 7-1 vote, to move forward, drafting a charter using the optional Plan A as the basis, and then making appropriate tweaks and adjustments as deemed necessary. I think, one thing that does need to be considered as you, again, move forward is ultimately the adoptability of this charter. And that, I think, needs to be kept in mind as you discuss this issue.
To the point about adoptability, if we were to go with the districting system, we would have this additional time to, like, the vote would be put into next year, and we would have time to further, not necessarily modify the charter further, but have discussions and educate and advocate, so on and so forth. And I think it's wisest for this charter decision to be made next year in the primary election. And I'm saying that as somebody who typically, independent voters don't participate in primary elections, even with referendum questions, because it's just not something that's consistent. I really think this is a conversation that needs to be continued into next year so we can have a more thorough understanding instead of the polarizing conversations that occur around presidential election cycles.
I really strongly disagree with that. I think we want this to be voted on at the election gets the most robust turnout.
Yes.
And I don't think, if this is all, I don't see any benefit to additional time. And we are going to finish our work. We're going to have somewhere between the end of July and the end of August. Then we have 2 months to conduct basically a political campaign to, engage the community in support of this charter. I don't see, to me, extending this into 2025 is a liability, not a benefit.
Why is it a liability?
Because we're already on a trajectory to finish our work. We will have plenty of opportunity to engage the community about this once we have a draft.
I'm not for extending it long, but I think if that's what it takes, I think as a commissioner, we brought our concerns up about redistricting. I think we did have enough time to get the information we need to be able to discuss it and to be able to stay on target. We keep having these long discussions and putting it off and not discussing that. Is it going to go on? Are we going to get the commissioners to support the charter if we don't even get to discuss the things that matter or the reasons we were out there saying when we ran for home rule commissioner, the two biggest items that was talked about was earned income tax and districting. They were the two big things that everyone talked about would be able to happen with the charter. And not to have them on the table and have a discussion about them is,
I think we've had discussion about, what more discussion, what's the nature of more discussion that you need?
What does districting maps look like? He put a map up there. What does that look like? How does that break down?
That we know that that we don't know and can't know what the district maps look like until we engage somebody, a professional, to do that, and we're not going to do that.
Why?
We don't have the ability to do that.
Why don't we have the ability to do that?
Because we are not authorized to spend the dollars to bring in somebody that's going to do this.
I think that I asked several times, what is our budget? What have we spent?
Have you asked the Board of Elections about your maps?
I don't think my maps are a relevant conversation
Right.
because, as Peter says, I'm not a professional. I'm
that's
not saying it was
the
an
basis
insult
for
to me,
this
but I'm not a
continued
professional. They were hypotheticals. But I actually want to circle back to say, people do vote in primary elections. It's actually the biggest rebuttal I get to when I'm like, hey, do you want to be an independent voter? They're like, no, I got to participate in the Lancaster City primary elections because it matters to be a Democrat. So people do vote in the primary elections. I would say I would agree with you to the extent of independents don't vote in primary elections, but definitely the parties do.
Okay,
It's a-
respectfully, Tony, let's stay on your first topic, which is you want us to
Redistricting.
talk about
Yes.
districting.
That's where
And can we revisit that when we have everybody here to do, do we want to take another, final vote? Because
Well, it would be almost a month from now because our next meeting is a presentation with PFM on finances of the
23rd.
city. So we either have
we
to,
could still do that vote prior to. We could do two things at one time.
What's going to happen between now and then, I guess, is the question. You're right, we have talked about this, we've
There's 9
brought it
members.
up, and then I'm just curious, what more information do you need? How can that decision be made? I don't know what, between now and next month or whatever, what's
I
the
just
piece
think
of
the motion-
information that is critical to you that it may change what you believe?
I don't have that information
We don't have
about
the
districting.
information.
That's what we're asking for, whether that's a professional person coming and telling us, this is redistricting, this is what it's gonna look like, this is what it could look like. And knowing that information, I don't have that, I don't
so
know.
you're asking for someone,
Well, I'm not
who is a
asking, they said we,
professional
no,
to
wait,
draw a
I'm not
map?
asking that.
No.
It was said that the only way that's gonna happen is if we have a professional come in and we're not doing that and we don't have the money to spend on that.
but to
That's
do
what
what
was said.
exactly? To
To
draw a
give us some
map?
more information, if that's what it takes,
To educate us, essentially.
yeah,
it would be
to
education on
About redistricting?
about redistricting.
The process to redistrict or what?
almost
all
coming
of
up,
it.
with a plan tentatively of what would that look like for us here in the city?
Mm-hmm.
Practically speaking, could we have more information on what would that look like? Is
Or
that,
let me just finish my thought,
Redistrict.
okay. What would what look like? What would it look like to draw a map and the legal realities and the steps you would have to take to do the map? Or what is the benefits or the pros and cons of at-large versus districts. Because I feel like I was on the fence with you. I was very conflicted. I still am conflicted. But I'm really unclear what the three of you are seeking to understand.
I would like to understand all of that. Because I feel like I need more information on both of those things, really, honestly, to make a really educated decision. I just feel that we haven't really gained that information. We don't really thoroughly have everything needed to make that decision. I mean, it's a pretty serious concept. I don't feel like I have enough information about it.
There are other mechanisms that we could put in place that would make me feel more comfortable about an at-large system. Like, for example, the county commissioners, they only I'm not saying the county commissioner system is good. I don't like that a party can only put 2 candidates up and each person gets 2 votes. I think every person should be able to vote for all 4 seats on let's say it is a 4-seat election, all 4 seats, or a 3-seat election, all 3 seats. But in those 4-seat elections, each political organization can only put forward 3 candidates for 4 seats or 2 candidates for 3 seats. So that way it ensures that the residents have 1 vote to consider, like, is there somebody else who's not a member of my registered party that I would be interested in voting for?
I want the best people to get elected to serve on city council. And if you're a good candidate, you should be electable. And it shouldn't matter which party you are or aren't with, and it shouldn't matter what part of the city you live in. I want the best people to be elected. That's where, so for me, to me, like, I don't feel like I need more information, because my opinion is that at large produces the best chance of the 7 best people serving the city.
I feel the same.
Regardless of where they're from.
I don't support any further pursuit of it, because I feel like that what we've heard, the public feedback we've gotten, and what I see in other places where there are districts is you wind up with people who are focused on extremely narrow parochial concerns instead of the health and benefit of the city as a whole. And I understand that it is possible for someone to desire health and benefit of the city as a whole, even though they only represent a district. But we're not talking about individual people here. We're designing a system with incentives. And the incentive in the districted system is to look out only for your district. And I don't think that's good.
Well, I mean, you got to look at it, when you've got a group of people that feel that they're overlooked, especially people in the southeast area of the city, continually overlooked. Like Mayor Gray, when he was here, he said they made it a point to look for representation across the whole city, not just, and then there was no need to have districting. We have gotten away from that in the years. We no longer get representation from the southeast area. And if we don't come to council and speak up, no one speaks up on our behalf. So yes, districting would work. The newspaper did a whole article. We had the guy from F&M come in and talked about the pros and the cons. There were a lot of pros about why districting would work in our city. You gave us a report on the ethics that I read, that you challenged me to read, that I didn't want to read, but I read it about the difference in districting and, there was 4 elements of what districting would and wouldn't work and why you would do districting. I don't think everybody has that information and knows that information. But to sit here and say, we just don't want to do districting because it's going to drive us out 2 months, or we don't see the need of representation, or we don't believe we're going to get the best candidates if we do districting, I think that's a hard statement to make. Now, you critique me on making a lot of statements if I say council don't care, but yet you're going to say if we do districting, we're not going to get the best candidates.
I'm not convinced that drawing a district map for the city of Lancaster would take a lot of time.
No.
But the thing that concerns me is deciding who's going to draw the lines, who's going to decide that the map is going to be voted on. And you could put into a system in place that benefits politicians to draw lines that retain their party or themselves in power. And that worries me.
Gerrymandering?
Yeah, it worries me. And I don't know how to build that in, build protection into a charter.
But why do the politicians have to draw the lines?
Well, they don't, but I worry about the expense. I worry about the ability for whomever into the future. Somebody has to run the process. Somebody is likely going to be a person who works for the city, if you're trying to take the politicians out of it. And I worry about if we have the capacity to think far enough in advance to build a system that will protect the citizens from being gerrymandered and having politicians control something. There's so much could happen in 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And so while I am very conflicted because, the point of districts is giving representation, but the concept is representation. And I understand that, but I'm concerned that we do not have the foresight to know how to build a system. I could be wrong.
But I
That's
don't
my
think
worry.
that's a reason not to do it.
For me,
That's
it
true,
is. For
but
me,
I don't
it's a
believe that's a
concern.
reason not to make change. But is there a way for us to find out how much this would cost, which is a question that I had asked before, and I'll ask again, to have someone come and do exactly what you were saying, because we're talking about expense? Is there a way we can find out how much that would cost? Well, I guess that's PEL would know. Because you're a consultant.
I don't think it is. We're not experts in district mapping. I don't have any,
And you don't know
I don't have election
nobody
law.
that could do that.
quite frankly, no.
So is there someone at the state we could contact?
The Board of Elections
Yes.
is
that's
who
okay.
I would start
I
by
will
talking to.
contact the
Board of
state.
Elections.
I will take that on.
I
I
would
will
suggest
contact the state. I will take that on.
If we want a presentation about what redistricting is, reapportionment, redistricting, gerrymandering, there are fair district speakers in this county. I could give a presentation. There are recorded presentations on YouTube, which I
Yes.
could share, that you can just watch, that explains reapportionment, redistricting, and gerrymandering. Now, of course, Fair Districts is talking about state level maps, so it's very, very big and it's a
Right.
very, very different story,
Different story.
right? But it
different-
has,
The general
it has
concept.
general concepts. Right.
I would ask the commission, I appreciate all of the discussion that's occurred. I would ask the commission what the maps in and of themselves will really tell you versus the decision that really needs to be made here relative to whether districts are appropriate. The maps are simply lines on a map. And, I think the fundamental issue is the number of council members and the fact that whether they are at large or are based upon districts or some combination thereof. I don't know, at least as I view this issue, that the maps themselves are critical in making the decision.
And I think what it was is we came in and was saying redistricting in 4 quadrants, and we were told it could not be like that. The maps would have to be drawn. You couldn't have the northeast, the southwest, the 4 quadrants of the city. So when we started questioning about redistricting, we were told we have to have the map. Thus, that's where we keep requesting, well, what would those maps look like? Because for us, we were doing it 4 quadrants, the 4 quadrants of the city. And we were advised that's not how it would work.
Yeah.
There would be maps and redistricting. So now we're saying, well, what would those maps look like?
The biggest reason I made those maps is because the argument that we kept being told was
Right.
specifically
We
every
could
time
not.
until I disproved it, that the Southeast was not dense enough to create that district that was being asked for. And I understand I'm not a professional, but it seems apparent that we could get close to a system that does have a fairly even 4 quadrants, maintaining relatively reasonable boundaries to what we consider the quadrants to be. So it seems like the argument keeps shifting as some arguments are disproven. And that's part of my frustration here.
I'm not
Well,
sure
so
it's disproven, and I still don't agree that it's.
Yeah, I don't know if you show me any map that's gonna change my mind in any way. 'Cause
Sure.
On principle, I just think it's a bad idea.
Sure.
And how the maps are drawn, or what streets are included, or what quadrants are there, I could care less about that, because I think what's critical is that we have the best, broadest representation, and it's gonna, that representation moves over time. And we looked at that when we presented the list of city councils since 1990, and, there was a period of time where there were 4 people from the southeast that were representatives on city council.
Yeah. No, I
There's
respect
none right
the
now.
position.
There's none
There's none in the Northwest right now. We have nobody on council right now. And it's gonna shift because we look at the city as a whole, which is a very small city. I mean, we talk about 7 miles, but it's really 4 miles in the central area.
Yeah.
And people move, you can move 2 blocks, you move half a mile away and you're in a district, and you vacate your seat
Right.
because you're not in that district. That doesn't make any sense to me.
No, you've been very consistent, and I respect your opinion. And to cycle back, I would probably go with you if there were some mechanism to, like I was saying, if there's 4 seats at large in an election, each party could only run 3 candidates, and the citizens get 4 votes.
Right.
That would make me feel comfortable in that large
If
system.
there was an alternative, I agree with you, 100%.
That to me sounds like you're trying to make parity on political parties, though, which is not necessarily,
The districting
like,
problem.
that's not what voting is. The point isn't to make, and the same with redistricting. Redistricts is not to make parity.
Could you define that for me? I'm sorry.
So the purpose of drawing the lines is not to ensure that, okay, for example, let's say we have 50% Republicans, 50% Democrats. I'm going to keep third parties out of it just to keep it simple. In the state. That doesn't mean that the lines should be drawn so that 50% of our House of Representatives are Democrats and 50% are Republicans. That's parity. Drawing lines to make that would be very unfair to the voters, because what if 80% of our voters are Republicans and they send a bunch of Republicans to the state house? That's just the reality. You don't want to draw maps so that you make equal seats for the parties who are at play, because that's not necessarily what the voters want.
Sure. So that's why the alternative that I keep bringing up of just holding off parties from running a full slate for all seats, the reason that comes to mind is because districting appeals to me because it means that the economics of someone's election are smaller. You don't need to, in theory, spend as much money to reach as many people. And I don't know how else to say this, but the one-time trickle-down economics seems to work is with political organizations where the money comes from the top and seems to funnel down to the smaller candidates, which is my biggest concern.
Yeah, but so you seem to be talking about districts to provide better political party representation instead of citizens and voters. And for me, when I think about it, it's like, what does voting by districts bring to the functional aspect of our local government? Does it provide better services? Is there more transparency and public engagement? Is there more oversight of each branch of government? Is there efficient and accurate checks and balances? And does it create better representation? So those are the things that are in my mind when I am balancing, should we elect council by district versus at large? And what I'm hearing from you, and I could be wrong, I could be hearing wrong, that you're suggesting that the districts will help elect a broad set of political parties in our council.
I guess what I'm really saying is that money has a massive influence in politics, and whether it's districts or an alternative, there is a problem with the system that troubles me deeply, and I'm looking for a change.
And
I don't
so
know
you
what
don't
that
believe
change
that
is.
if we go to districts that the money is gonna follow?
It will follow,
It's
but
gonna be the same problem?
Yeah,
I don't think this is not I don't think this is a solve for the money issue in politics.
I understand that argument, but the way I see it is that because it's more localized, it's more competitive, because that person, even though the money can be spent to get mailers and ads and billboards, that person has a better chance of knocking on every door.
I think you're not solving the problem.
And that's okay,
And
but
bringing on additional problems with it.
Yeah.
so I guess what I'm saying is I just want a solution, and I feel like we haven't created one yet, and that's my biggest frustration here.
Yeah.
I just feel like we haven't looked towards a solution yet.
I mean, the solution is probably to create, I mean, as we've been talking about all along through this charter process, is creating the biggest platform for the biggest opportunity and the greatest flexibility of things. If we go into a districting model, then that really narrows the possibility of our government, rather than keeping it as broad and open as possible. Because right now, I mean, there's nothing to stop the level of representation that you're requesting. But now, if we start going into, there must be somebody from this quadrant and this quadrant and this quadrant and this quadrant, all of a sudden, we've narrowed that down and pigeonholed certain things that must happen, as opposed to all the things that could happen. And I think, it's narrowing the focus of what we want to accomplish. And again, in a city of our size, I understand, Philadelphia, sure, maybe they need to have districting because they have such sprawling neighborhoods.
Right.
New York City, sprawling neighborhoods. Lancaster, I mean, heck, you can ride your bike around Lancaster in 15 minutes and you've hit every quadrant. At least Carl can. Carl's a good.
Yeah,
one.
if you're close into the center, yeah, you're absolutely
But,
right.
I mean, I think that's, we're not talking about this huge geographic divide that's separating things. And I think that, we have to look, and the historic pendulum of where representation comes from in different quadrants of the city. I mean, how many representatives do we have in the Northeast right now?
A lot.
And a generation ago, we would have said, well, that's an underrepresented part of the city. And it's just, it's changing. How do the forces of where people are organizing, and I think this gives opportunity for communities to organize and pull themselves together, and they can bring around the representation that, if there's a quadrant that feels as though they need to be represented in a strong way, bring candidates to the table, bring them up, and bring somebody that is going to garner the wider support of the community. I think that's.
Everything's actually giving me an idea. Can we put spending caps when people run for office?
No, that would be a state law.
But I
I
just,
think we're moving out of.
I
that's
just want,
Interesting idea,
Yeah,
not
but-
related
yeah,
to what
yeah,
we're talking
yeah.
about.
right.
But
Yeah.
Start-
And I just want to say, you say our purpose is to be broad. I don't believe that's the purpose of the Home Rule Commission. I think we have a spending problem. I think we're facing a deficit. And I don't think that means that we open government up to be broad to get that under control. I think that that's why we're looking at the Home Rule Commission. And the Home Rule Commission's purpose is to give people more power. And that's how that's in that blue book that we got that says Home Rule. It has it underlined. The purpose is that to give people more power than the optional charter gives us, is that we would go into Home Rule so that people would have more power. And that means in all the decisions that we make that they have more power. So I think that when you're looking at keep things broad, I think that's not what we're sitting here to do. We're trying to say, how do we cut spending and get money so that we're not continuing raising property taxes on people? That people can afford, people that's not represented on council from my neighborhood can afford to live in the city. So I think, we have different views on why we're on the commission, because I don't think it's to keep it broad and open. And that's why I keep putting interjections in to say, hey, maybe we need to narrow this down a little bit.
Make it specific.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
And I kind of feel you on that because, I do hear you. There are some times where quadrants aren't represented, and that may not necessarily be a problem in certain instances. But if we were to build in something to the effect of districts, it would mean that at least one person's there throughout time. And I don't know, the concern from the Southeast, I will say I do wish more members of the Southeast would come to the commission now during this time period. I guess I'm just generally saying I still think we haven't really fixed the concerns I have with our political system. And districting is just one of the tools we can use to it. It's a wicked problem. In planning, they have the term wicked because you don't necessarily tackle one thing and it fixes the whole problem. Sometimes you need to address it in a bunch of small ways, but I just feel we haven't addressed the problem. But I do understand that districting may not be the solution. It's just that it is a tool that I'm advocating for, because I don't know what is a solution that would be amenable to a majority of the commission.
Well, the intent was not to run out the clock. We've run out the clock.
Yeah.
So since we have a standing rule that we will end this part of the commission meetings at 8:30, it is past 8:30. So we have to halt the discussion at this point. I assume we will pick up in our first meeting in June with this point, with the current draft.
What?
Are we doing the PML meeting?
Our next meeting in June, we'll be picking this up in June.
23rd, and we'll,
The 23rd, we'll be having the presentation from
yeah,
PFM.
but it depends on how long it is. If-
Oh, okay. So we will continue with this
Yeah.
going forward.
But, so Brian, just.
Yes.
For the purposes of, it seems as though there's some kind of unspoken or ambiguous amount of information that people are looking for. Can we define what that is so that we don't just rehash the same conversation? Because I'm not sure what, I'm at a loss to understand exactly what that is and how that's going to create clarity in terms of a decision that can be made. So is there, between now and then, I mean, Amy suggested, okay, there's, fair districting things that she can provide that can help people understand it. Are there other things so that if there are people that feel as though they need more information, that more information can be studied and then we can come to this table with an opportunity of making a decision rather than asking for more time?
I think that's reasonable.
Yeah.
I just want to say, I'm very confident. I feel like I do not need any more information. So I just want to say that now.
Yeah, if somehow it can be put together, someone send to me exactly what information they are missing. I can, working with PEL, maybe we can find ways to get that information. Provide me some specifics. I'm with Mr. Barber in that I do not know what the information people want is. We've discussed it, and again, I'm just trying to keep the meeting going.
Yeah, no, I understand.
But if there is a request for specific information, I will see what I can do to find resources.
I mean, I think I've made it clear to say we want to know how much it would cost to have somebody come in. I think we made it clear to say we would like to see what maps would look like if there were maps. I mean, I think PEL gave us some home rule charters where they do have districts.
Yeah.
So I haven't heard anybody say, well, look, I called up Philly and their districts don't work. I didn't hear no one say, I called up Reading and their districts don't work. So we do have precedents of having information that says districts do work in cities the size of ours.
Well, we
So I'm
can't
looking-
continue, if you have
Right.
specifics for information,
Well,
we can't continue the
okay.
debate on the
Okay.
Section 202. Let me know. Let me know what it is you want, and I will see if I can at least find a
In
resource.
addition to what I just said.
Well, it would be great if you would email it to me to let me know specifically, so I make sure I have it right.
Put it in writing, so there's no
Yes,
mistakes.
so there's no confusion that what I interpreted you to say and what you actually meant.
Hesitant to say that because
So-
we're on ourselves in the.
Okay, so moving on, subcommittee reports, public engagement.
Oh, sorry. I'm like taking notes.
Would you like us to move on to the preamble committee, which has not met?
No, this is not met, so.
Preamble committee, have you
We
met?
have not met.
We have not
We're very
met.
confident in our preamble, so.
Thank you. Ethics Commission, which we superseded your meeting this
That's
evening.
right, and after this meeting, we'll quickly powwow to determine when we will meet again.
Okay.
Okay,
Uh,
ready now.
Just a request to make sure if it's gonna be sometime shortly, get us notice as soon as possible to get that. Mr. Harris and I get it out.
Yeah, don't worry, we
We'll
got
get
it.
it like tonight.
Yeah, no, I just reminding of advertising that.
Okay, circling back to public engagement.
Yeah, so our next meeting is May 15th at 2:30 in council chambers. We have been to 2 of the mayor's neighborhood events. The next one is May 22nd the next one
15th.
May
is the
15th.
15th at 5:30 at Culleton Park, and then May 22nd at Milburn Park And then we have open streets, and I just today submitted our request to be a vendor at the African American Cultural Parade. We will be there 3 days. I signed us up for 3 days, but we still don't have anyone signed up for the 21st. And we have a very long day on the 24th, and so far it's just Maxine and myself. So, just something to think about.
What day of the week is that?
The 24th is a Saturday.
So we're not having it on the 22nd, right?
No.
I
Oh, well, we are, but it's covered.
It's covered.
I could come to the 21st after
Okay.
I'm done at Langston Township's Planning Commission.
Okay.
Any other,
Who's on the 22nd?
Tony, Pete, and Carl.
I just want you to know, we did speak about the home rule at a neighborhood meeting we had. Maxine was there
Okay.
on, got blank, just this past week. So we did talk about it. We did pass out the cards. We have intentions on passing out the cards also on June the 8th meeting.
Is
So-
this the South End Concerned Neighbors?
Yes.
Okay.
So I don't have any cards. Am I allowed to take some of these?
Yeah, that's what I want. Okay, so, if anyone can do May 21st at the African American Cultural Parade, please let me know, because Tony would have some help. Then with our neighborhood groups, which Maxine was referencing, the city has put us in touch with several of neighborhood groups. We have heard from Musser Park Civic Association. They are requesting either July 2nd or August 6th. We come to meet them. So again, if you could look at your calendars, I will send an email asking all this. Look at your calendars. If you can do one of those dates, it would be giving a presentation, our presentation, and then answering questions. And so hopefully more of those will get lined up. Those will be in July and August. The organizational outreach, thus far, we've contacted, well, John is going to contact the Lancaster Alliance Merchants. We have SACA on the horizon, the Lancaster Rotary, Lancaster County Association of Realtors. And so if you all have suggestions,
NAACP.
do you have a contact with them? Would you like to reach out to
Yeah, I'll
him?
reach out to Blanding.
Okay.
And
I
I
also,
think I gave you a list too.
pardon me?
NAACP, Blanding Watson.
And I gave a list to Maxine, so maybe she sent
Okay,
it to you.
she hasn't, but I'll connect with her. Okay. And then I'm hoping that John and I can meet sometime soon and record the presentation and do the video. I know I keep saying that, but it's been busy. And that's what we have so far.
okay. Any questions or comments for the Public Engagement Committee? Okay, Budget and Finance. Mr.
We have not met since last week. Our next meeting is Monday morning, and so more to come at our next meeting.
Will that be meeting with Director Campbell? Is that,
She's out of, I think she's not available until the beginning of June. Is that correct? Director Tina Campbell is out of the office until after Memorial Day?
For 2 weeks, so yes.
Right, so we have her scheduled for, she is coming, so our next, okay, so just to give you the clarity on that, we have a meeting on Monday, this coming Monday, the 13th. Then the next regular rotation was Memorial Day, so we are not meeting on Memorial Day. Then we are meeting on June 3rd, and June 3rd is the meeting when Director Campbell will join us to contribute to our discussion.
okay. Thank you.
Oh, actually, I do have something for public engagement.
Yes,
Getting, what was the QR code we had said yesterday we wanted to get produced?
Oh, yeah. I'll talk to DJ. When I was
What?
working the table, I found that only having the QR code for the feedback form maybe was not the thing we should do, that we should have the sign up for the email QR code also. So anyway, I'll talk to DJ about it. But right now, this is what we have.
okay.
I need to take these.
Maybe DJ could just.
Any other questions or comments for subcommittees?
We, just for the Finance Committee, we do have things that we want to bring back to the whole committee that we were.
Yeah, I mean, at our meeting on Monday.
I don't know when, we'll decide.
At our meeting on Monday, we're gonna, one of the first thing we do on Monday is gonna be, we do have draft language from PEL, similarly to what we got tonight on, or what we got last week on city council. So we're gonna give, the three of us are gonna give that one more look on Monday with the goal of feeling confident that that's ready to share with the full commission. So-
What time is the meeting on Monday?
9 a.m.
9 a.m. Okay, anything else for subcommittees? Okay, thank you. Any old business? Any other business for the commission? Okay, turning to public comments. Are there any comments from the public? If so, please come to the lectern, provide your name and the street on which you live.
John Gavea, 100 block of East Orange Street, and you guys would probably feel I was neglecting you if I didn't get up and say something. But anyway, just one point, and maybe I misheard this, so I apologize if that's the case. But when you were discussing the powers of the mayor, there seemed to be some concern with the mayor appointing department heads, and maybe somebody else should do it. And my question is, from what I consider a practical point of view, if the mayor isn't appointing the department heads, then who is supervising the departments? We've had you could have someone, say someone is appointed by council, who is at odds with whatever the mayor has made a priority. And yet you've given that person the authority to run the department. Chain of command, it just doesn't work if you have, I'm doing this on behalf of the city, but I'm not reporting to the executive officer of the city.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Gouvet. Any other members of the public? Okay. Thank you. Moving on, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Without objection? So moved. We are adjourned. We'll see you all on the 23rd.
Sorry, John.
Darlene comes back to talk about.
Yes, sir. You got it.